Welcome to the lead podcast for Advocate Collective with me, Amy Orr-Ewing. And it's really exciting to be at today's episode, which is our season finale and our Christmas episode, which is quite unbelievable. So this podcast really began as a kind of overflow of my book, Lead Like the Real You, where I was seeking to reflect on more than 25 years of work and ministry as a female leader, and to think about what would it have been helpful to know 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago that no one ever tells you. And, you know, lots of kind of leadership initiatives are characterized, I guess, by paradigms and programs and, you know, systems that you could implement to improve your productivity. But it struck me that the way that Jesus raised people up and developed leaders was life on life. And so the format was letters, and the overflow has been conversations and podcasts that are, you know, I guess overflow of relationship and speech, talking about the things that are closest to our hearts. So in our episode today for this season finale, we're going to be thinking about getting ready for Christmas. Now, sorry to say it, but Christmas is coming really soon. I don't know how prepared you feel. I feel really under-prepared. But what I want us to do together in this episode is reflect, take stock, and hopefully gain some wisdom for this crazy frenetic season of Christmas. So one of the things that I found really helpful to do in the build-up to Christmas is to take a moment to breathe deeply and to not allow, I guess, the consumerism of the Christmas season, to not allow all the demands that are placed on us, often as women, to, I guess, stop one actually deeply reflecting on Jesus and the incarnation, the whole reason for Christmas. So we're going to hear from a few other voices that have joined us in the podcast season for their wisdom on Christmas. But what I wanted to do was to begin this time together with some words from my book, Mary's Voice. So this book I wrote last year as again, a reflection, I guess, on the build-up to Christmas, but seeking to recenter a woman's voice, a woman who has often been overlooked and kind of not listened to within the church, even though she's one of the most important women for the Christian faith. So the heart of it was to recenter the voice of the Christian faith's most important female witness. So let's take a few moments to think about the run-up to Christmas, and specifically Mary. So in the run-up to Christmas, there's a peculiar amount of work to be done that can fall into the category of physical and emotional labour. The endless unseen work of caring that generally, if not exclusively, falls to women. Despite all the advances in opportunity and equality in our society, women carry the brunt of domestic and emotional labour. And at Christmas time, it's all too easy to exhaust ourselves further after work, turmoil, trauma and anxiety of the year that has just passed, to exhaust ourselves now with Christmas. Centering a woman's perspective at Christmas is about far more than empathizing with her eye-watering feats of planning. It's about paying heed to a woman's viewpoint being necessary if we're actually going to truly celebrate Christmas. Because the central character of the Christmas story, other than the baby Jesus, is a woman called Mary. It struck me that, you know, in all the years of my life that I've attended nativity plays for my children, I have 3 sons, and so obviously they have played male roles in the nativity. They've all been a shepherd with a tea towel on their head. Sometimes one of them's been a king or wise man with a crown and kind of nicer outfit. One year, my youngest son having been Joseph the previous year in the Nativity, was then demoted and cast as a pig. So I had to source a pig costume and tried to point out to the school that it was quite unlikely there would have been a pig in a Jewish barn where Jesus was born, but I was overruled. So the pink costume with the little ears had to come out. But it struck me that in all of those nativities, and actually the one time in my life when I played Mary as a small girl, in all of those nativity experiences, Mary never says a word. She's a mute, silent, passive figure. So you've got, the innkeeper and the shepherds and Joseph and the angels and the kings, but the one woman through whom actually around whom this whole story revolves is kind of silent and passive. And actually that's not true to the narrative of Luke's gospel. It's not true to the heart of the Christmas story at all, because Mary is portrayed as this woman who has extraordinary agency, who makes decisions, who questions things, who when she's told she's going to have a baby says, how can this be since I'm a virgin? She understands human biology and pushes back. And then later on in the New Testament accounts, Mary is vividly present. She's present in some of the teaching of Jesus. She's present at Jesus's first miracle at the wedding at Cana. She's present as a witness to the crucifixion. She's present at the resurrection, and she's named by Luke as being in the upper room when the Holy Spirit comes and Pentecost happens. So Mary is an archetype for us at Christmas, not as a silent, mute, maternal, kind of virginal, impossible ideal of a woman with a kind of fat cherubic baby on her arm and, beatific smile. She's a real woman engaging in the challenges of the era she found herself in. But one of the things that Luke says about Mary is that she pondered, she gathered up these things, she treasured them, and she pondered them in her heart. So in all the busyness of Christmas, I want to encourage you as women engaging with this podcast in all the leadership roles you have, whether, we've heard from, women in banking, women working in psychology, in financial services. We've heard from women leading in all sorts of different spheres, in politics and in consultancy and kind of professional advice services. So Christian women leading in all sorts of different spaces. The one thing that I'd love us to think about as Mary, as a woman who did have agency, is that she treasured and pondered and reflected in her heart. So take time over the Christmas season, not just to facilitate everything for everyone else, not just to buy all the gifts and organise all the social gatherings and show up for the people in your life, but take time for yourself to breathe deeply and ponder in your heart what it means that Jesus came. So earlier in the season, I spoke to an amazing woman called Lisa Schultz, who works with senior political leaders on the Hill in Washington, DC. She's one of the chaplaincy team there, working with Chaplain Black, the US Senate chaplain. And I asked Lisa, who works with incredibly high-powered people, who has this extraordinary pace to her own life, how she, as a Christian woman leader in her work and world, how she manages Christmas. And this is what she had to say. Fabulous to welcome back the Reverend Lisa Schultz, Chief of Staff for the United States Senate, Chaplain Black, and working there on Capitol Hill for over 21 years and 17 years as, working with the Senate chaplain. Hello, Lisa. Thank you for being here again on this Christmas show this time. So we're thinking about all the pressures that women face at Christmas time, and the kind of crazy mental and emotional load that we carry in the run up to Christmas. And I just want to ask you, can you give us some wisdom about keeping our eyes fixed on what really matters when we're also planning stuff for kids. You're probably doing a lot of work related to Christmas. There's a lot of pressure. You're thinking about in-laws and food and presents and everything you're thinking about. Can you share some practices and some wisdom that you use to keep Jesus central at Christmas?
Oh, to keep well, my answer,
how do you survive? How do you
how do you survive? How do you keep Jesus
the plate
central?
spinning?
That's a great question. You know what? My answer is probably a little bit unconventional, but that's okay. In 2020, I did not know how I would survive in the winter without having other people around. And so my friends and I decided to book a place in Florida, a condo in Florida, and go down for Christmas where we wouldn't have to be masked. And it's become a tradition. And so every Christmas now, these dear friends of mine, we actually go somewhere, and that is my kids' Christmas present. And it has been unbelievable because you're traveling with other families. So your kids are occupied with each other. So the parents actually feel like they're having a vacation. And we're with believers. So we are singing with one another and celebrating with one another. And actually, that has become the most amazing tradition that I never want to end. I tell all of the kids, when you're married, you are going to come here at Christmas and celebrate this way with us. It is a requirement for your spouse that you are coming to Florida, to Sanibel Island, to celebrate, because it is just relaxing. And it kind of takes away all of the other stressors that we have at Christmas. And I just need that. I need a break. I need a time of rest. And so I kind of happened into that in 2020, but it has become the most life-giving. There's 7 families that are coming that will be there this year. We started with 4, but now we're up to 7. And so it's just a fun Christmas tradition. And the other thing I would say is, when I was in my 20s, I went to Romania for Christmas, and that was life-changing to see kids in an orphanage just get an orange and one gift. And I was shocked by that because I grew up in a family where we gave many, many gifts. And so I've carried that over. My poor children.
I bet they love it. Here's your orange.
They're very happy with my Florida Christmas presents. But they don't get much for Christmas. And I kind of I don't know if they know even, because that's just the way we've done it. So they do get a few gifts, but I have told myself I will never have a commercialized Christmas. Like, their birthdays are very, we do a lot for their birthdays, but it has become something for them that I don't even think they know because we started right away. And it was just based off an influence that I had from my time with some of the poorest of poor. And so we try to do more serving and give our money away to people that really need it, instead of spending it on my kids who really have everything they need. So
amazing. Thank you so much, Lisa. That's brilliant wisdom for us all as we think about the Christmas season and what really matters. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I absolutely love Lisa. What an incredible woman, working in an extraordinarily high pressure, fast-paced environment, the city of DC, working with political leaders, and herself experiencing high levels of pressure, as whether it's family life or work. And so just listen to what she said. That idea of how to kind of manage Christmas is all about actually extending grace to herself, to her family, to those who are closest to her, to finding a way to make Christmas not just meaningful spiritually, but also a season of joy, and a season of, I guess, relaxing as well, and breathing in. So I wonder what you could do. Probably won't be the same as what Lisa and her friends do. I also had the opportunity to ask a similar question to Heather Joy, our amazing guest on the podcast, who works in psychology, and she's an amazing expert on trauma. And I asked her about navigating the dynamics around Christmas, which can feel challenging, particularly if we have more difficult family setups and situations. And so how do we kind of protect our emotional and mental health, our psychological well-being, whilst also gathering with people who we're related to or people that we might find quite difficult in the Christmas season? And this is what Heather had to share with us. Heather Joy is a cognitive behavioural psychologist and EMDR therapist. It was wonderful to have her on the show a little while ago. She's developed an interest in trauma and PTSD following work with traumatised refugee populations, and she's had a career in the NHS for over 15 years in mental and physical health services. Heather, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. On this Christmas episode, we're really thinking about the run up to Christmas, and it sort of strikes me that often women bear the brunt of what I call the emotional labour load, often in life anyway, but definitely at Christmas, whether it's that pressure to, gather, connections and friends and family, or, buy presents for elderly parents or young children or nephews and nieces or godchildren or whoever it is. But there's just a lot of pressure and a lot of expectation. Can you just give us a few words of wisdom for anyone in that, slight dread? There's excitement, but there's also a bit of dread of what's coming down the line with Christmas approaching, and have I done it all, and have I got it all together?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, as you say, I think the expectation thing can be feel like such a burden. So I think just managing those expectations of yourself, managing other people's expectations, and trying to be kind to yourself. Knowing that it is a lot, and that's really important, that you're just taking care of yourself. So sort of self-regulating, through sort of, just stopping and pausing and breathing, kind of to pause from the frantic activity, and getting outside, perhaps, just, breathing kind of the air, being in nature, really just sort of grounding yourself.
That's so helpful. Thank you. I think I'm going to go and do that right now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.
That's really powerful, isn't it? Heather is encouraging us to, I guess, go into some of those situations with a deep reservoir of preparation and of truth. I mentioned earlier about Mary treasuring things in her heart and pondering them, not just rushing from one event to another, not just ticking off that enormous, gigantic to-do list. What are you treasuring in your heart? What is meaningful to you from the incarnation story? Can I encourage you to give yourself that gift of space and time to connect with God, with His goodness, beauty, and truth in this Christmas season? For me, one of the joys of doing an Advent study, and in particular this one that I've been part of, Mary's Voice, has been to rediscover the rich well of scripture and of the extraordinary details that are there in the accounts around the incarnation, and to kind of deeply feed on those in my own life, whether those are the Old Testament prophecies fulfilled in the life of Jesus, or whether they're the details of the encounters that Mary has with other people, including with other women, old women, 2 old women in particular are mentioned. So Mary, of course, is about 12 or 13, a young girl pre-marriage in that culture. And we see two encounters where she meets with first an older relative, a woman called Elizabeth, who is extremely old and has also had a miraculous conception that did involve her husband Zachariah, and she's going to give birth to John the Baptist. And Elizabeth sees her 13-year-old cousin who walks into her house. Elizabeth knows nothing of what the angel has said to Mary. And Elizabeth is celebrating her own very public deliverance from barrenness. You know, her husband has been this high-profile high priest in the culture, and everyone knew they couldn't have children. And now she's got this miracle pregnancy in her 80s. And everyone's coming to celebrate her, including her relative Mary. Mary walks into her house, and Elizabeth is filled with the Holy Spirit and given this prophetic insight. And she says to Mary, her young relative, "Who am I that the mother of my Lord would come and see me?" She doesn't know Mary's pregnant. She's given this prophetic insight that Mary is not just pregnant, but she's carrying a baby who Elizabeth refers to as her Lord. In other words, she knows Mary is carrying Jesus, who is going to be God with us. That could only have been by the Holy Spirit. This is not something Elizabeth could possibly have made up or thought of. So extraordinary was it. So an older woman doesn't just bow to a younger woman, she bows to an unborn baby in the womb of her younger unmarried relative. This is sort of like exploding all our categories. Ponder, treasure the truth of the incarnation this Christmas. Don't let it pass you by, what it means that God entered history. Think about some of the details of this story, maybe treasure them in your heart. As we prepare for Christmas though, for some of us, there will be particular pain as women around Christmas. If we have lost a child, I've experienced miscarriage. Some of you listening to this might have experienced that, or baby loss, or the loss of an older child. And Christmas can be an excruciatingly painful time of year because it's like we remember that pain in a different way, but coming around each year, each Christmas somehow is marked. Or it might be that some of us listening to this or watching this podcast are in a season of directly experiencing infertility. And that could be that we're married and we're trying for a baby and it's not happening. Or it might be that we have unwanted infertility because we're single and we haven't been able to find the right partner to share our lives with. And actually Christmas can be a really painful time for that experience as well. Not just because Christmas is centering the birth of the baby who redeemed the world, but also because it's a time when we mark that another year has passed without perhaps our longed for hope being fulfilled. Or it's a time when we gather with people we haven't seen for a while who maybe ask intrusive questions. And that can really exacerbate the pain of infertility and loss. We had an extraordinary episode of the podcast with the founder of the Rhythm of Hope, a friend of mine called Sarah Lang, who experienced years of infertility and founded a ministry really geared at supporting Christians experiencing that very peculiar and particular kind of suffering. If you haven't listened to that episode, I really strongly advise that you do. But when I was sitting down with Sarah, I asked her in particular, what would her advice, her practical advice be to people who experience infertility in the Christmas season? If this is not your experience, but you have friends who might be experiencing infertility, you're going to find this wisdom really helpful as well, so that you can be an ally to people experiencing this kind of pain rather than actually exacerbate their pain. So let's listen for a moment to Sarah Lang from the Rhythm of Hope. So thank you so much for joining me, Sarah. Sarah Lang, director of The Rhythm of Hope, which is an infertility charity. Sarah, can I ask you, what wisdom and help can you offer people struggling with or experiencing infertility in the Christmas and Advent season? What helps when another year has rolled around without a baby and you're kind of going into this season of celebration can feel quite overwhelming? What wisdom can you offer that could help people?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Christmas is a beautiful time of year. It's my favourite time of year. But my goodness, for those walking the road of infertility, it is full of triggers. And it can be very overwhelming and quite painful, unfortunately, primarily because at the centre of the story of Christmas is a baby and a miraculous conception. So already there it is, right, in your face with the Christmas story, which we can't and mustn't shy away from, but it is very difficult. And as you say, on a more human level, another year, calendar year, coming to a close without the desire of our hearts being met, and just how disappointing and painful that is, and how scary the year ahead can feel and what might be. So we did that for sort of 13 Christmases. I did it for about 20 Christmases with the worry of infertility. And I do have a few thoughts, so hopefully these are helpful. But a lot of the focus, not just from the church and through the Christmas story, but also through the media and just society, is on Christmas being for and about children. And that's really difficult for those who don't have children or who have lost children, actually. I recall leaving work for the Christmas holidays once, and a colleague saying to me, a nurse who was the most wonderful, kind lady, but she said to me, I was in the depths of infertility. She didn't know, but she said, I mean, Christmas really, it's just all about the children, isn't it? If you don't have children, there's no point really. And, people who don't have children should definitely be made to work. I mean, obviously we're nurses. And she went off on this whole thing. And I just remember crying in the car and feeling almost like I wasn't eligible or allowed to have the full Christmas experience. I felt quite ashamed, really. And then from that day, I noticed all the adverts on telly or all the social media posts seemed so family focused, and it was very painful. So we had to ask ourselves, like, how can we navigate Christmas in a way that isn't heartbreaking and that we can bring joy to our family and friends and have joy in our own home? I think the first thing to remember, first and foremost, is yes, in the Christmas story, we see Jesus come to earth as a baby, and we see this story of Mary. But Jesus didn't stay in the manger. He didn't stay a baby. And the truth of Jesus and the reason that Jesus came to earth is for the very reason that we are finding our suffering painful. He came to meet us in our suffering, to set us free from our pain and our shame, and to set us free from the things that hold us back, to give us new life in Jesus. And so actually the grown man of Jesus, the person of Jesus, the truth and the story of Jesus is actually what you need to be reaching for at Christmas, not the baby in the manger. And just remembering this, the person of Jesus came for this very reason, for all my pain and all my questions and all the uncertainty and all the longing that I hold, so he can take it all on himself. So remembering the man of Jesus for me was more helpful than the baby. And the other thing, sort of maybe a bit more practically, a few thoughts I had were, one is to make plans over the Christmas season that you can relax and flourish in. So don't set yourself up for heartbreak and heartache. Obviously, you're mindful of family, close family, friends, situations that may be rude to not be part of. But at the same time, you want to think about your own self and how you can be your best self over Christmas. And so think about where you will be on key days, what the big family gatherings are, and what might be difficult. Will you find it really difficult to be, say, around for little children, nieces and nephews, or wider family opening presents first thing in the morning? Would that be really painful? If it would, what could you do instead? Could you offer to rustle up something amazing in the kitchen for everyone? So remove yourself from the room and say, oh, I'm going to do Christmas breakfast for everyone, and bring that as your offering, but it takes you out of the room. Or could you take the dogs for a walk? Or could you just, if you're going for the day, could you just arrive a bit later, actually? Something practical like that. Another piece of advice is to rehearse some answers to difficult questions that extended family may or friends may ask. Unfortunately, relatives are usually the worst at asking very personal questions about your plans for babies. And you can feel stuck or embarrassed or upset. And I think having a rehearsed answer as a couple is really helpful, or 2 or 3 that you can bat away and then topic change. I remember we had a few, and it was just really, really helpful. They changed over the years of our infertility journey, but at first it was something as simple as when someone said, do you not want children? Are you not going to have children? My first answer was, oh, we would absolutely love to. We would love to. And then I would change the subject. Like literally, that's all I said. Then after a while, it became, we would dearly love to, but it's not proving so easy, and I'd rather not talk about it. Obviously, that one's a bit tricky because people get a bit awkward, but you can come up with your own and then subject change. And another little tip we had was maybe something that as a couple, like almost like a code word. So if a situation is becoming unmanageable, or you're feeling triggered, or it's feeling really painful, a way to leave, or to have a break, and to take a walk, or to do something else, and just having a little code between you as a couple, just to help each other out. This is not just for women, this is for men too.
Get extricated out of that situation.
But most of all, make plans you can flourish in, have some rehearsed answers, think of the scenarios that may be too difficult and find another plan. And most of all, remember Jesus as the central, most focal point of Christmas, not the baby, but Jesus and all he can do and all he is, and how he will meet with us in our pain, and give us all that we need in this season.
Wonderful. Sarah, thank you so much. I love Sarah so much, and I think it's so amazing that we do have resources as Christians that can support us around all kinds of different painful experiences, but particularly the loss of a child or the experience of infertility. Be kind to yourself and be kind to those who might be experiencing that in your life. I also asked my friend and the amazing leader and communicator, Claire Williams, how she navigates the Christmas season. And this is what Claire had to say. Claire Williams is the founder of Real Questions, a platform which explores the intersection of race and faith within a Black British context. Thank you so much, Claire, for being willing to share some wisdom for the Christmas season with us. It can be busy, crazy, a huge juggle. Can you share wisdom with us on how you've managed the run up to Christmas with the particular demands that you face of work and family, parties, money, all the things? What has helped you?
I think having moments during the Christmas period to myself, because I think it can be quite hectic with family and expectations, or purchasing gifts and going to the Christmas services, those sorts of things. And I think particularly as a single woman, it can be hard when you go to Christmas. Every Boxing Day, my family and I, we have the whole extended family get together, and there's a new baby in town. Oh, a new couple. And it's really, as much as I have joy and celebrate them, it can be a little bit like, oh, I'm here again at another Christmas. So I think sometimes taking moments just to breathe by yourself, and pray if you pray, or just to think and reflect. I found that quite useful.
That's so helpful. Wow, thank you so much, Claire. We appreciate your wisdom, appreciate everything you're doing, and thank you for sharing that with us. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that wisdom from our guests. I hope you've enjoyed having a few moments to breathe deeply and think about the meaning of the incarnation, the meaning of Christmas through Mary's eyes, through that vision, that ideal, that idea of pondering and treasuring deep truth in our hearts, and somehow that carrying us through this very frenetic season. I want to say thank you so much for journeying with me in this podcast since August. So we've had such a wonderful journey this year, and I've been so encouraged by your comments, your feedback, your engagement with the podcast. Can I ask you for the last time on this season finale to consider, if you haven't already done so, leaving a 5-star review for the podcast on whatever platform you engage with it on, and maybe subscribing and following it too, and sharing it with friends. We've got really exciting plans for content in 2025. I didn't set out necessarily thinking this would be something that would continue, but it is going to continue, and we're going to be returning in January. The podcast is going to be the outflow of my new ministry in the US called Advocate Collective. And Advocate Collective exists to publicly advocate for the Christian faith. And that means engaging with the big ideas of the culture around us and pointing people to Jesus in secular spaces, in spaces where that might feel quite unlikely, as well as in the church. We're also hoping to build an arm of the ministry that really seeks to come alongside people who have suffered through abuse, whether that's sexual abuse or spiritual, psychological abuse. And we want to be in a position to provide really amazing grants so that people who've gone through that kind of abusive experience can receive the sort of support they need, therapeutic support, as well as other kinds of advice. So if you're interested in finding out more, you can check out our website, which is advocate-collective.org. And you can journey with us in the podcast in the new year as we seek to engage with leadership, with ideas, what it means to advocate for the Christian faith in public, as we seek as well to be in the trenches of some of the most difficult and painful experiences of harm and abuse and trauma, like we've already been doing on this podcast. So thank you so much for journeying with me. Happy Christmas to you all and to your family. And I look forward to 2025 with more conversations, new content, and an adventure of faith ahead of us.